Hi, everybody. It's time for a little video on for the Grace Network. Um, I really am so grateful to all of you for participating, and I read all of your requests for prayers, and I keep all of you in my prayers, and I hope we do the same for each other. If there was a way to measure the power of the influence of grace in your life. I mean, I wish there was a way to just snap my fingers and you could see that extraordinary sparkling force that is grace and how it comes into your life. But that's not the way it is in this dimension, not at all. But you have to kind of trust that somehow or other there's a force greater than yourself at work in your life, because there is. And it's hard to hold that. It is so hard to hold that, especially since, I mean, honestly, sometimes when I watch the news or I read the newspaper, and it is overwhelming how much suffering there is in this world. I mean, and it's not just this world. I mean, I read history all the time. The human experience is not a day at the beach. It is a extraordinary challenge of discovering what we can take, what we can't, how much we need each other, and how things go better when we rely on each other, when we help each other out. Healing fascinates me for all kinds of reasons. One, not the least of which, is that I wrote a book called Why People Don't Heal. I was so fascinated with I was so naive when I started my work as a medical intuitive many years ago now, many years ago. I believed that everybody wanted to be healthy, fully healthy, and that as soon as they found out what they needed to do to be healthy, they would jump right on that. And it was a shock. It was a shock to me to see how people continually sabotage their health and their well-being. But as the years of my life rolled around and my world became increasingly, I guess I would say, mystically focused on the deeper parts of ourself, the participation of the our soul in the rest of our life, which is a funny thing to say because you can't measure that, you can't see it. It's kind of an instinctive perceptual study. But there came a time, for example, when I recognized that all of the depression and anxiety, this massive epidemic we have of depression, anxiety, suicide, as I looked into the causes, as I spent time seeking out the people in my workshop, spending time with them who really have this crisis, and as it impacted my own family members, I realized, you know what, this is not a psychological, therapeutic crisis. These people are in a spiritual crisis, a genuine spiritual crisis, the kind of crisis that was recognized in monasteries centuries ago. The recognition that the it's possible for us to become detached from our sense of who we are and our sense of power, because we're terrified of that connection, because we're terrified. And it doesn't make any sense, because if you look at like the focus of people these days, everything is on empowerment and becoming empowered and self-empowerment and all of this. And yet it's the very thing people fear the most, is this journey of becoming a fully empowered person. Excuse me. It goes in stages, because of the first level of empowerment that we go after is physical. We want to have a home. We want to have stability. We want to have financial security. We want our sense of empowerment to be something we can touch. But after that, the challenges, the real challenges of our life, the deeper ones, about whether or not we like ourselves, whether or not we're honest people, whether or not we have integrity, the deeper, more powerful, whether or not we stop fearing others and we get to a place in ourselves where we no longer require the approval of others to feel good about ourselves. That's when real empowerment starts. It's not about what you acquire, it's about what you become. What you become. And as I realized this more deeply, I saw how often people sabotage this journey to becoming conscious of themselves, their own actions, their own attitudes, the power of their attitudes, that there is uh, a leap in one's inner growth where you go from seeing the outside world as responsible for why things aren't working out to recognizing your inside world has so much more, is the real engine behind what happens to you. Can't control everything. I mean, I can't control weather and I can't control storms and I can't control all of that, but what I do have authority over is how I'll respond to that. How I'll respond to that. That's where our power comes in, is we choose our response. And we choose our response even to how what someone says to us when they're speaking to us, whether or not we think, why do I want this person's approval? What is that about? I can't let the power of anyone else have that kind of influence on me. When you get to this point of understanding yourself. And from another perspective, I realized how vital this part of our journey of self-esteem, of self-empowerment was to becoming healthy. And then even more deeper than that, and this is where the spiritual crisis comes in. Even the development of self-esteem, it goes in stages. It begins with people learning to draw their boundaries, to claim their power, to whatever that stage is. But eventually, that journey of self-esteem is going to take a person to a much deeper place of whether or not they can dialogue with truth. Not stuff, not another person, but truth. But truth. Now, I was with somebody recently, and this person complains constantly. And, I said, how you doing? Oh, I'm all right. It literally like that. He wasn't even aware that he was deliberately communicating this message so that someone else would feel very bad. And then, what can I do to repair this? It was this incredibly manipulative experience and action on his part. And I said to him, oh, I'm going to do this again. I want to know why you are so filled with self-pity. You have all this opportunity coming toward you. Well, I'm just, I just don't know. I'm just trying. I said, you're not trying anything. You're out. I said, your agenda is to make your parents feel awful so that they'll step in and take charge of you again and somehow or other make your life magical and successful without you doing anything. When I say dialogue with truth, this is what I'm talking about. The capacity to say, wait a minute, if I don't get to blame everybody else, then I have to take a look at my participation in what's happening in my life and the consequences that my attitudes are generating in my life. When I say dialogue with truth, it's between you and how you finally recognizing the extraordinary power that you have, the extraordinary power that you have, and that it begins with saying, "Wait a minute, I have to really assess the power of my attitudes, the power of my intentions." Again, I'm going to refer to near-death experiences because there's such a resource, um, and how many people who've had near-death experiences come back and report that it's not their accomplishments that are reviewed in their life review. It's the intention behind. Everything that matters is the power that we initiate to set something in motion, the power of our attitude, the power of our motivation, what motivates us to think the way we do what we do. Today, if I did a book on healing, and I'm writing a book now on everything I'm talking to you about, actually. And it's quite the challenge to articulate this. It is an enormous challenge to find the words that relay how powerful you are at the subtle level. That in the early days of my work, years ago, decades ago, I would have said that the causes of illness are big stress factors that are obvious, but I don't believe that anymore. I do not believe that. We are so powerful at the quantum level. It is our quantum self, our micro self, the power of an attitude, the power of our vocabulary. How often you get up and you just start the day with negative thoughts in your head. As I said to this kid yesterday, what is the matter with you? You're in charge of your vocabulary. And when someone says, I just can't help it, I want to put their head in the toilet for 7 minutes. Well, if you can't help it, who can? But see, this is, and it was suggested to me that maybe he needs therapy. And I thought, he doesn't need therapy. He needs a spiritual director. He has no capacity to have faith in himself or in anything else. And I cannot emphasize to you how powerful faith is. And I'm not talking religion. Believe me, I am not talking religion. I'm talking about faith in the fact that this universe is governed by sacred and holy forces that have your best interest at heart. And your best interests are, if you understand the laws of nature, just start there and think, how do the laws work? The laws of nature are like the law of balance. Everything is always working to keep you in balance. And so your intuitive system, your guidance system, is also about not making sure you get the next job or car, but holy guidance is about keeping you in balance. And if you're in balance, you will instinctively, spiritually instinctively, do the better thing for yourself. It's the nature of God is love, light, and law. These are the 3 L's you gotta remember. And that the laws of nature are governing you, and they govern every part of you, from your blood pressure to the laws of creation that work within you all the time. So that when you have a decision to make, the question you should ask, does this keep my life in balance, or will it throw me out of balance? And if it's throwing me out of balance, What's the source of it? And when I say dialogue with truth, no one else should ever be a player in how you answer deep questions. Let me repeat that. No one else's name should ever be mentioned on when you go deep in yourself to understand something. You say, well, I did this because of that person. No, 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 no. As I said to the kids in my family, you go back and think this through. You didn't do that because of that person. You did that because you were powerless and you allowed another person to influence you. It has nothing to do with that person, because if it wasn't that person, it would be someone else. This is what happens when you do not have enough self-esteem to make a decision based on closing your eyes and saying, guide me. What should I do in this moment? That has nothing to do with anybody else's life. So when it comes to healing, it's this level, this micro level of our dialogue with our own clarity, our dialogue with truth, that for me is the core ingredient of what makes a person healthy, what makes a person capable of recovering from different things, or of recognizing it may well be time to depart the earth. That too is healing, but we'll save that for another discussion. But I also want to close this with, I've wondered, of course, for years and years and years about miracles. I think miracles are fascinating. Fascinating. One time, I was flying home from Rome, and I'm in the, what do you call that, waiting lounge, right? And I wanted to get a cappuccino, and there's this guy behind me, and he kind of cut in front of me, and then he's speaking Italian, and I thought, and so the barista goes to this guy first, and I thought, oh. And then we're standing in line to get on the plane, and now he's on the same plane as me. And once again, he's kind of enchanting people around him, and I'm thinking, who's this guy? And then I find out that he is a priest with the Vatican, and he is one of the priests that are sent out to investigate whether or not a miracle happened. And now did I change my tune. Now I thought, oh God, please sit me next to this guy. Please, I got to be next to this priest. I'll do anything, really. I'll do a novena, anything. Just get me next to this priest. I've got to pick his brain. But that didn't happen. And the whole time I thought, so close and yet so far, what I would have given to have a conversation with him. So they send people out to investigate miracles. Now, in my own world, I think miracles are the most spiritually natural thing in the world. I do. And I think that if we could actually see the many times heaven has intervened in our lives. I've told the story 1,000 times. I'm driving home from Mars Candy Company, where I worked when I was in college. It was after midnight. I hear a voice, my guide, and said, slow down. A red truck is going to run the next stop sign. And at the time when that came, I didn't think, I think I'm hearing a voice. It was like being under command, and you don't even think about it. I just slowed down, and it wasn't until the red truck ran that stop sign that I realized, oh my God, I was told. And I was laughing all the way home. My entire response all the home was, you are incredible. You even care when I'm driving a car. You know when I'm leaving the factory. And it mattered to you. It mattered to you. What kind of radar system do you guys have that you are just like all over the place? I cannot tell you. That imprinted my life so deeply, so profoundly. That guidance in that moment, slow down, that said, okay, then my life must have purpose, because you don't want me to exit yet, because that would have killed me. And I cannot tell you how that organized. It wasn't that I didn't have faith prior to that, but wow, did that lock me in to realizing, you even know when I'm driving home. I mean, wow, I cannot tell you what that did for me. It was so profound. So I've always had this interest in miracles and in what's possible and what's not. And so to that, what I will say is back to self-esteem. I think there's, I think so much. I think our whole entire relationship with the nature of God, with understanding what God is, with getting away from this anthropomorphic idea of an off-planet God that looks like us, to finally accepting this universal force that is everywhere and is all creation at all times. We have to get out of this juvenile idea about, I don't like religion. Shut up. Grow up and get a hold of how incredibly gargantuanly conscious this universe is. And that we are living at the time when the idea of religion is getting dismantled and a biospiritual ecological theology based on co-creation is making its way in. It's going to be quite some time before it takes hold, but it's taking hold more and more and more. And in the process, we have to rise to a capacity to really recognize the power that we have within us. The need for self-esteem is a part of that waking up. It's a part of us becoming capable of the management of the force that is each of our individual lives. Back to miracles. What I realized is I think miracles and divine intervention happens all the time and would happen even more directly, especially in healing. And in healing all the subtle parts, healing an attitude, healing a fear pattern, healing all of that. But I think what faith plays this role in that you really have to believe that a power greater than yourself, as they say in AA, is capable of intervening in your life, is capable of making its way into the structure of your life through people, through events, it's capable. But your role is that you have to become someone who's capable of believing something incredible. I think one of the reasons, and maybe the biggest reason, miracles don't happen all the time in healing, especially instantaneous healing, is because a person doesn't have the self-esteem to actually have an experience given to them like a sudden healing and accept that it did happen to them, especially when such an event tends to become a magnet for the disbelief in other people who will come and say, no, that couldn't have happened. That didn't happen. Why you? If you don't have enough backbone, spiritual backbone, to be able to withstand that type of feedback from others, it will turn you into someone angry, someone who, you don't believe me, da 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 da. The miracle would be too much for you to manage in your life. And so healing tends to maybe come slower in a more organic way, maybe over months instead of over an afternoon. That's the power of faith. Faith has to do with the speed at which we allow things to happen in our life. There's so much more that I can say on this. Obviously, I'm doing a workshop this coming next week on love, light, and law, and on the power of your light. And I love teaching this. Oh, I love it. Okay, I want to end with this because what's the network of grace without, and remember, read everybody's prayers. keep, you don't have to remember everybody's name. It's not possible anymore. But what is true is that you can think, I am sending grace to everyone and I'm receiving the grace from them. And I am sending the grace of healing to everyone. And open yourself to sensing that connection with the grace network, to actually sensing it, that I am really in an atmosphere of grace. Don't see yourself as an ordinary person anymore. Just realize you've invited an atmosphere of grace to take charge. And even if you commit 1 minute a day, that is precious goods. 1 minute of prayer is precious goods. I was wondering this morning, Lord, does heaven have a limit on the number of miracles one person is allowed to experience in life? I've witnessed a few miraculous healings, and I'm well past doubting that you intervene in our lives. And I've spent time with people who have experienced miraculous healings, and I'll admit that I was curious, why them? How could I not be curious if I did come up with conclusions about the way of heaven? If such a thing were possible at all, I'd concluded that there is no pattern at all to the blessing of a miracle. A miracle can happen anytime, any place, to anyone. Heaven does not play favorites. I've gathered that much, but in my little quest to crack open this mystery, I also concluded that healing is but one of many ways the messengers of heaven are sent to intervene in our lives. Life is a theater, set up for divine intervention to occur all the time. The common thread I found in all the people who experienced healings is that they were expecting you at any moment. It did not occur to them that you would not show up, even though they were not necessarily anticipating that their illnesses would be completely healed. But some form of assistance to them or their family would be given. And they were open to whatever grace you poured into their lives. One person told me, I always expect God. What a powerful prayer. Always expect God. And so I will. That is your prayer. Lord, I always expect you. And you always show up. Okay, everyone. Thank you.